Hey, it's nice to be here and talk. I've reached out to you first in June of 23 as I well as I went to Jin and Ava to standing against the WHO, and I've seen your own dance, and I was very thankful for your courage and voice, and to see the election come, and it's like people like us, which have the facts and stand on the facts and morals, they want to ostracize and kick out. How are things going on now in the UK, Andrew?
I think people are waking up in the UK, but I mean we've had to have inflicted upon us an awful government, which is already, despite having 65% of the members of Parliament, the Labour Party have now got 14% support in the country after just over 18 months in government.
Oh wow.
Um, it's the most unpopular government, the most unpopular prime minister in history. But anybody will be, because I mean, the politicians we've got, they're not self-determining. They're merely puppets. They promise various things, and they've got to deliver another agenda. The Conservative Party before was very unpopular in government at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But Keir Starmer's broken all records for following the global agenda and becoming very unpopular very, very quickly. So we could have another 3.5 years of this government. That could do an awful lot of damage to the UK. I mean, whatever's going on in the world, I mean, I honestly think that the UK, we are the head of the snake. I don't think Canada exported whatever these problems are to us, or America. I'm afraid we exported them all to you.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, we're a tough nut to crack. We've probably got the most controlled media. I actually think we're the most corrupt country in the world. We're just very, very good at hiding it.
Wow. Oh, it's it seems as if whatever is going on there is trickling down to here, and here they're so adamant and to push Bill C9, and it'll it'll make all of our symbols of faith, words of faith, if it's against a LGBT or some other person, it'll be deemed illegal, and it's taking our church and our society back to the days of the Roman Empire.
Yes, well, I mean, Christianity's been attacked around the world for quite some time. I mean, we're in the bizarre situation in the UK where anyone who preaches the Bible in the streets is at risk of being arrested.
Yep.
Um, there's exclusion sites where no praying, even inside your own head, silently, that's banned.
Yep.
Um, and people who live at their houses in those areas, they've been warned not to pray in their own houses.
Really?
Yes, the leaflets going around. I mean, that shows how much they know the power of prayer is very strong.
Oh yeah.
Um, but
Sure
if you
is.
but if you want to preach the Quran, uh, or, or just take over, despite all the 2,000 mosques we've now got in the UK, if you want to just kneel down with your mat in the street, I've never seen anyone ever arrested for that in the UK. But if you were to preach the Bible, undoubtedly you'd be in trouble. In fact, I saw a woman arrested on a video in London, I think it was, where she objected to a man preaching the Quran in the market square, and she was arrested for objecting to him preaching the Quran in an English town.
Wow. So it's yeah, and here, if
Hmm.
you're a pastor preaching things outside, or stand up against this sick drag queen story 3 hour, you're basically, yeah, handcuffed and jailed. And we know that they can't change their DNA as soon as you're born a boy, XXY, or a girl XX. You can't change that. Your appearance can change, your core cell, but biology remains the same.
Absolutely. X, Y, or double X, the sex chromosomes. There are a few anomalies where
Oh
people
yeah,
are double XY.
double yeah.
But I mean, it's extremely rare. But we apparently live in a world where science doesn't matter,
No,
facts don't matter, and if you wake up one morning and decide you want to be something else, then you can. I mean, while I was an MP, I actually had a mother and her daughter came to see me, and the daughter had a recording on her mobile phone. A girl in her class had identified as a cat, and she said it was ridiculous, the young girl. And her teacher took her next door, and she recorded the conversation where he threatened to have her expelled from the school if she didn't accept that her friend was a cat.
this is
I
just
mean, insane.
insane.
It's child abuse.
It is.
It is child abuse. And some of the it has sort of affected children's mental health, because in some of the classes, um, they were claiming that a quarter or a third of the pupils have got gender dysphoria. Uh, well, I mean, this is ridiculous, and all the evidence is about people who are promised that the answer to your promise will carry out some operations and you'll become a different sex. I mean, all the evidence I've seen is that the suicide rates go up when they realise after their operations that it hasn't solved all their problems.
Yeah.
So it's completely counterproductive for the wellness of the child. If people want to experiment with themselves and they're over 18, I think they've probably got the right to. I wouldn't advise anyone to do it, but they have got the
Oh
right
no.
to do it. But for goodness sake, just leave the children alone, let them grow up, and then they can decide what they want to be. But I mean, men who wore women's clothes, we used to call them transvestites when I was a boy.
Yep.
And you could go to clubs and watch that sort of thing if you wanted to.
Yeah. And it's yeah, it's evil showing itself in broad daylight, and our current systems are are weak and won't stand up to this im immoral
Well, I think that we're all moving in lockstep
behavior.
again, and our education systems are being pushed information from the United Nations. I don't know if you've seen the United Nations guidance for sexuality
No,
education around the world. I mean, it's horrendous. They're saying that 4-year-olds should be taught to masturbate, and by 6, you should be able to express your needs and preferences with regard to sexuality. Well, no, you shouldn't. They're not allowing children to be children. They're not allowing them to develop normally. They're pushing an agenda, and it's Kinsey, the work of Kinsey, and he's a completely discredited, almost certainly a paedophile, and he researched lots of paedophilic information, which is now crazily being pushed to our children. So that's just another situation where our societies are being undermined from within, and unfortunately we're funding it ourselves through our education system. But those who do not wish our society well know full well that children are very malleable, and the time to get them is as young as possible.
yeah,
And I'm afraid that's what they're doing, whether it's about sexuality, whether it's about gender, whether it's about the net zero scam, and the demonizing carbon dioxide, which is actually the gas of life. Again, there's no science behind any of
no,
their claims, but they're scarring a whole generation.
no. It's been government and WHO policy that's pushed over science. Uh, I'm a I'm a PhD scientist who's just looked at for the for vaccine COVID mRNA vials, and I've shown they're full of DNA contamination. There's SV40 in the Pfizer vials. There's scientific fraud going on. Our government has pushed vaccines onto the people worldwide, and the these things cause people harm, and our governments are still pushing this whole thing of safe and effective, which is completely false.
Well, we knew a long time ago they weren't effective. They don't stop transmission or contracting the virus. Indeed, they were never even tested. They already knew. I mean, I have very big questions about how a systemically introduced vaccine, i.e., injection into the bloodstream, how that protects someone from an infection of the respiratory tract, the mucosal lining of the respiratory tract. In fact,
Exactly.
I've quoted in the chamber of the House of Commons Anthony Fauci's own words, where he said it can't happen.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise that you can't get an immune response, a long-term immune response from a systemically introduced vaccine.
Yeah. No.
And I don't think anybody has.
No.
I mean, we can't cure the common cold, can we?
No. And there's so many respiratory viruses out there which keep adapting, and it's a complete insane path. And we know the lipid nanoparticles are toxic. Spike itself is toxic. There's so many ways these vaccines cause harm, and at the same time I shove out a great big good peer reviewed scientific paper, and it's being attacked, and it to the point the journal is being pushed to pull it, and it's a complete big pharma scientific peer review cartel that's pushing things, and it's all because of cash. It's being funded to control the scientific narrative, the whole gender narrative, and it's all linked. In Canada, a month ago, CFIA killed all of those healthy ostriches, never even tested them, and it's all under suspicion of those birds being sick, like
avian flu.
Avian flu.
Well, where they're starting the scare stories in the UK a couple of weeks ago, saying that there could well be a turkey shortage because of the super strain of avian flu. I mean, I get the impression they're lining us up for a pandemic again, or the fear of a pandemic. They never stop with their fear mongering. But you're absolutely right. The DNA contamination, that I was aware of that a long time ago, because that's what warned me. And I was working with a guy, Dr. Josh Getchko, in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Excellent. He's not a scientist. He's actually a social scientist. He's a criminologist, and he went through the paper, and that's how we discovered that batch 1 and batch 2, and that the actual vaccines that got emergency use approval, that genetic material was produced using a PCR machine with no contamination, very slowly, very expensively, but that the vaccines that actually went in people's arms were mass produced up in plasmids in bacteria. And we've got bacterial and plasmid DNA contamination, plus the cell walls giving anaphylactic shock. And we know that in the UK because on the second day of mass vaccine rollout, the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency in the UK changed the rules and said everyone has got to stay at the vaccine centre for 15 minutes. Not on day 1, but it was on day 2. That's because they'd had anaphylactic shock on day 1, which they weren't expecting from the trial results, because there was no endotoxins from bacterial cell walls in the trial data. But there was in the vaccines that were being put in people's arms. That shows me that not only was a different vaccine given to people than had got approval, but the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency knew it was a different vaccine, and they didn't pull it. So basically, I'm afraid we know from Fryman that it was 1 in 800 in the trials, but they didn't have DNA contamination and bacterial cell walls in there. I'm afraid that all the evidence I'm seeing is that the actual vaccines that went in people's arms were probably 5 times more lethal than the 1 in 800 that we saw in Fryman et al. Analyzing Pfizer and Moderna's own trial data. So you're talking about 1 in 120, and they want you to have multiple doses of this. I mean, humanity's playing Russian roulette, and there's no end apparently to these boosters. But the good news is, David, that I mean, over here, 90% of doctors and nurses now won't take the boosters.
Really? Awesome.
Yep, and they won't take the flu jab either, because last year's flu vaccine, they obviously all know from the Cleveland, Ohio clinic study that last year's flu vaccine was 27% negative efficacy. So everyone who took it had a 27% increased chance of contracting flu or another respiratory infection.
Yeah.
So I mean, but the sad thing is, these doctors and nurses who wouldn't take the COVID vaccine themselves, the booster, they're still giving it to patients.
Yeah.
And when I speak to them confidentially, they all know that if they told each other the advice they're giving each other privately to any patient, they would be immediately struck off.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Here, if you don't give it, if you cause vaccine hesitancy, you're delicensed, attacked, and sidelined. And I've had a lot of colleagues have seen our research and said it's good, solid. I agree, except if I don't support this vaccine, I will lose my job.
Well, I spoke to a professor in Norway 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, and I think he was the University of Western Norway Institute of Science and Technology, and he'd written a paper analyzing vaccine uptake in different countries and excess deaths. And he said there was a clear correlation between vaccine uptake and excess deaths, in that for every 1% of your population vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccines in 2021, there was a corresponding 0.1% increase in mortality in 2022. And I asked him to his face. I spoke with this professor in Norway, and I said, well, when are you going to get it peer reviewed? And he laughed and he said, there's nothing wrong with our maths, he says, but no one will peer review it because they'll never get any funding for any research ever again. They'll be blackballed. And I mean, what an admission. I mean, yeah. When the World Economic Forum and the United Nations say we own the science, I mean, they do own the science now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't own us, do they, David? They don't own us.
No. Nope. I've looked, I've done the science. I know what's there, and our own work I submitted did it 5 times for peer review. It would not even be sent out. They're like, nope, we're not touching this at all, because it's such a hot, difficult thing. It's like it goes against things. If we're getting funds, we can't deal with this. And science is about engaging a topic factually, irrespective of one's viewpoint, looking at things and seeing what's actually factually going on, and making a decision based on the facts and not one's paycheck.
And it's exactly the same in politics. When I spoke out in 2022 to stop the UK government from authorising the vaccines for small children down to 6-month-old babies in the UK, lots of MPs told me that they knew they thought there was something wrong with the vaccines. Many of them had vaccine harms themselves. Some had had heart attacks, and they refused to speak out.
Wow.
One of my colleagues told me that her sister had just taken a Moderna booster and was paralyzed from the neck down, and she wouldn't speak out.
Wow.
She said that the problem is that her sister was a nurse and she'd been coerced into taking the booster, and now she was at the mercy of our National Health Service in the UK. And her comment was, Andrew, you know how the NHS deals with whistleblowers, so I'm not speaking out because they'll do something to my sister. And that's the world we're living in. So you're supposed to speak. You're supposed to speak in the chamber of the House of Commons without fear or favour.
Right.
A bit like scientists are supposed to report facts.
Yes.
I can assure you, there's a lot of fear, and they tried to bribe me in January 2022. I was offered anything. I could have anything I wanted to shut up and just play along with it.
Wow.
Anything I wanted is what I was offered. And I said, well, is that the game we're playing? And they said, that's the game we're always playing. And I said, in that case, if that's the game we're playing, I know what I want. I want the Prime Minister's resignation letter, but apparently I couldn't have that. That was the one thing I couldn't have. So I said, well, I don't really want anything else if that's the game we're playing. But I mean, once I spoke out on the vaccines, people I'd worked with for 12 years, I was ostracized. I had to eat all my meals on my own for 20 months in the House of Commons because no one wanted to sit with me.
Wow.
And I was thrown out of the party I'd been in for decades. And then when we had the elections in 2024 in my area,
yep,
mysteriously my vote dropped from 63% to 3%, and the ballot boxes disappeared for hours, which is inexplicable. And they pulled the exit poll, so there was no exit poll in my seat. And every time I go outside the house here, I'm still living in my area. Half the people tell me they voted for me, but I only got 3% of the votes. And one of the ballot boxes came in, and it had got a lot more ballots in it than we're giving out in the polling station. So, and then that's inexplicable as well, isn't it?
Complete voter and rigs. I ran here. I talked to 12,000 people. I told them of the vaccine and the vaccine injured, and I got 1.3% to the vote, which is fine. I'm not a politician, but they wouldn't even show my own face on the TV. It's just the three faces and then other in a box. I'm like, am I such a threat to the system that they aren't even allowed to show my own face?
Well, in a world of corruption, even daring to speak the truth is seen as a revolutionary act, isn't it?
Yep.
And that's where we are. That's where we are in Canada. That's where we are in Europe. That's where we are in Australia and New Zealand.
We are.
I mean, coming back to the DNA contamination and the simian virus 40 promoter region, which has been found, am I right that Pfizer didn't even declare the SV40 region I mean, surely how many red flags do we need before the regulators would pull these vaccines? I mean, I
It
get the impression
wasn't
nothing's going to stop these vaccines at the moment.
disclosed at all to the EMA, FDA, Health Canada, and TGA. And it's been known since 1999, David Dean's work. If you take a DNA fragment attached to a 72 base pair SV40 enhancer and put 3 to 10 of those into a non-dividing cell which has an intact nuclear envelope, 3 to 10 in a cell, it will move across the nuclear membrane and integrate into the genome of that cell.
Do you think
these LNPs transfect and put all of this right into our cells, and there's about 500 billion of these fragments per dose.
I mean, I heard that some of the doses there was more DNA in them than there was modified RNA in them.
No, it's about 1/3 DNA to 2/3 mRNA, except all of the mRNA is N1 methyl pseudouridine modified, and it makes it a plastic like mRNA piece that is very difficult to break down in our cells. As well, it makes all sorts of off target immune responses. It's all because of ribosomal frame shifting.
Do you think that the COVID vaccines are responsible for the cancer spike we've seen around the world?
I think so.
No one. Oh, yes. But no one really wants to. What do you think is going to actually? I mean, in '76, the swine flu vaccine was pulled for 12 post-vaccine deaths in America.
Yeah,
about 1 in 100,000 adverse events. We're talking about 1 in 120, 130 adverse events with these. What's it going to take, David, to get these vaccines suspended and investigated?
Yeah. FDA this week has said that a diabetes monitor has caused 7 deaths and several hundred injuries, and therefore it should be pulled. And yet a COVID vaccine has caused many thousands of people to be harmed, and our governments will not pull this at all.
I was told, David, that the Moderna COVID shot has got, on average, twice as much genetic material in it as the Pfizer shot. Is that what you found from the vial?
Pfizer is 167 times over the legal limits, and Moderna is like 670 times.
And of course, what the people aren't being told in the UK or anywhere else is that, and I've written a legal letter to Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. He
Yep.
was the Chancellor of the Exchequer and then Prime Minister, accusing him of a vested interest, that he had control of 11% of Moderna shares, which he bought for $500 billion, $500 million in 2016 through a fund he was co-founded in the Cayman Islands called Theleme Partners. And I put a legal letter to him in January this year, a letter before action, and in his response, he couldn't deny those facts.
Wow. Yeah. And
he also then said that our preferred partner for the future was Moderna, the company that he'd got shares in. He gave them £1 billion of UK taxpayer money to build a new factory in Oxford and contracts for at least 150 million doses of their mRNA vaccines for a year for the next 10 years. That sounded like a gold-plated contract to me.
Yeah. And the same sort of idea and thing is going on here in Canada,
and also in Australia as well. I believe it was. I think the corruption of what we're seeing is that you're seeing the corruption of science. I'm seeing the corruption of politics. And we know that the media is corrupt because we can't get the message out there, even though we've got the evidence.
Yep.
So I'm really glad that you invited me on to record this, and hopefully,
so
who listen to this will share it, and we can get the message out.
Yeah. Two things first about resistance. You have always worn a large paper clip, and that thanks to our good colleague Zoo, I also have put one on. Now, I've heard it's a World War II Norwegian resistance thing. Andrew?
Yeah. So it's probably 3.5 years ago. I spoke in Stavanger in Norway at a conference. It was called the Binders Conference, and the Norwegians called paperclips binders for binding things together. They invented the paperclip, or a version of it, before the Second World War, and they used to wear a paperclip on their clothes to show resistance to the Nazi occupation. And indeed, the Germans got very upset about wearing the paperclip, so it was actually punishable by instant death by firing squad for being caught wearing because you were indicating you were part of the resistance. Now the paperclip is seen as an international symbol of resistance to tyranny, and also a symbol of unity. And when I was out all those years ago in Norway, speaking about vaccine harms and excess deaths, the Norwegians said that they hadn't got any politician who was willing to stand up in their parliament and speak about these issues. And they asked me if I'd become an honorary member of the Norwegian resistance, and also that when I was speaking in my parliament in the UK, that I'd speak for them. And of course, I was honoured to speak for our friends in Norway as well. So yes, I've worn the paperclip on my jackets ever since, and my friends in Parliament hated the fact that I was, and they tried to say it was some far right symbol. They couldn't be further from the truth. And you can Google all that. You can Google that. I think they actually have a international paperclip day. I think it's at the end of May, and it is a symbol of resistance to dictatorship.
Wow.
And also, the more people that wear the paperclip, and we're binding each other together. And it is those links around the world, the links of humanity, about getting to the truth, honesty and decency. That's what's going to see us through.
Yeah.
And I honestly think we are going to beat these people, because you cannot suppress the truth. You can hold a football or a balloon underwater for as long as you want to, but eventually it always bursts through to the surface.
Yeah, and there's so much evidence is coming out. There's vaccine injured who have been harmed or killed, and people are seeing things, and it is coming out. I don't think anyone, well, I would think there's no one left who doesn't know someone who's been harmed by these shots. It's
I know
just
that's
so
that's so sad.
common. I'm basically hearing of a new case each week, and they feel uh, abandoned by our healthcare systems and our governments, and basically left to fight for themselves. So, is there any way in which people can fight to get things changed? And yeah,
Well, they've still got to keep pressurising our puppet politicians.
well, yeah,
But I mean, what they did to me in the UK Parliament, I mean, half of it was to punish me for speaking the unpalatable truth, which they didn't want to hear. And they told me they wanted to. They privately, I was told they wanted to cover the vaccine harms and excess deaths up for 20 years. And bear in mind that thalidomide was covered up in the UK for 11 years after the drug was withdrawn
wow,
on safety grounds, but even be mentioned in the chamber of the House of Commons. And guess what, David? The marketing slogan of thalidomide was safe and effective, to the point where after thalidomide, the phrase safe and effective is not allowed to be used to describe pharmaceutical products after thalidomide. But of course, it was the politicians and the health professionals and the civil servants who described the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, as safe and effective. It wasn't Big Pharma, because they're actually prohibited from saying that. It was a complete operation.
yeah,
I think we've just got to say no. And I mean, if 90% of health professionals wouldn't take the booster, people have got to ask themselves what's going on here. I mean, the uptake is very low. The problem is, I think they're spreading this mRNA technology with the lipid nanoparticles into many other medicines. They see
yeah,
it as a very cheap way of making a lot of money. And I'm afraid what's been perpetrated against humanity around the world is in fact so inhumanly horrible, evil, that most decent people can't believe that anyone would be capable of doing this, of perpetrating these acts.
yeah,
But unfortunately, they have. And that's part of the problem of people waking up and understanding what has been done to them and their family and their communities. Um, and of course, we've got a compliant mainstream media around the world. It's in very, very few hands. And Big Pharma is in just America, in the US alone, is a $3 trillion a year business, and that buys a lot of influence, as we've seen.
oh yeah, yeah, yep, and I'd say just keep talking about what is going on. Our own science they want to make it suppressed and disappear, and we just have to, yeah, keep voicing things, informing others. And it's about time that not just the right, which have woken up. It's about time that everyone looks at life, with the cost of food going up, the whole messaging being controlled, and just do two simple things: make good observations and ask difficult questions about what's going on, and ask yourself, why are people being silenced? I find it so ironic. Okay, I obviously stutter, and I fight to be heard all the time, and yet I'm one of those that they want silenced. So I'm just gonna keep on.
And also, I think, remember, the same people that are still telling us, assuring us the COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective, they're pushing digital ID onto us. They're trying to censor what we can say online. This is because I think they think too many people have woken up, and they're very worried now. Well, we need to make sure that the rest of the people wake up, and there won't be anywhere for these criminals to hide at the end. I mean, it's not safe for elected politicians now to walk in the streets without police guards.
Really?
Okay, but yeah, it's just not safe. And I've watched over the years the fences get ever larger around the UK Parliament, and the number of armed guards increase every year. They know what they've done to the people, and when the people wake up enough, and I think we're getting there, yeah, we are going to have a great reset, but not necessarily the great reset they were hoping for. We're going to have a better one. And when this is over, and I honestly think it will be over, look at the society we can have where we actually have some real science.
I sure hope so.
We can get the science. We need to get the politics out of science and get some real science back into our politics.
Yes,
that's a New Year's resolution.
That's good. I like that. I like that.
So I think we can leave it there. I'd like to wish everybody in Canada and around the world a very Merry Christmas.
Yes.
And I think Christmas is a time when that, especially in the UK, that bit between Christmas and New Year, when it's a sort of time for taking stock of what's happened over the previous year and looking forward to the new year. And every year for the last sort of 6 years, I thought, well, I know what's going on in the world. I've sussed it. And every year I discover more things, and life is, we never stop learning, and we can never stop fighting for the truth, because what sort of world are we going to leave to our children and grandchildren to inherit unless we make a stand? And there's only one place to stand, and that is on the truth, and you're never alone standing on the truth.
That is well said.
Thank you, David.
And a very Merry Christmas to you in the UK, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
And God bless. God bless.